Welcome to the Uncommon Living podcast, where we host dialogues in human resilience. I'm Thomas Seager. I'm an associate professor in the School of Sustainable Engineering at Arizona State University and the CEO of the Morozco Forge Ice Bath Company. My guest today is Doctor of Chiropractic Olivia Pompa. In Dr. Pompa's practice, she helps her patients detox from the chemicals and pathogens that are poisoning their bodies. But in the podcast, she recognizes that not all stress is toxic and not all exposures are chemical. We talk in particular about the psychological stresses she has overcome from trauma she experienced as a child, and how hormetic stress stimulates adaptations inside the body and the nervous system that make us stronger. How do you feel?
I feel good. I have to admit that was the coldest cold plunge I've ever done.
You just did 3 minutes with chunks of ice at 33 degrees up to your jawline.
So my old apartment complex had one, and I think it was around 40. And so I came in here thinking there's no way I'm going to make like what I typically did there, which was like 3 minutes, 4 minutes typically. I was like, oh, I'm probably going to be lucky if I make it 1 minute. But you coaching me through it was helpful for sure, and slowing my breathing. But yeah.
Dr. Pompa, you know Instagram says ice baths are bad for women. How could you get into a freezing cold ice bath and then say you feel great?
Well, I know I'm healthy. And you just explained it to me. That health, the real determinant of health is the ability to adapt to stress.
This is something that has come up in a podcast I did with Rick Cohen, who's a medical doctor, but he's no longer seeing patients in the traditional sense. And he and I spent 24 hours talking about some of his crazy ideas. One of the things that we came up with is health is not a state. Health is your ability to move between states. Health is your capacity to heal. And we'd be better off thinking of health as a verb than we would as a noun. That blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, it's good because I think it's a reminder of, needing to be aware of how we live our day-to-day lives, and how always being stagnant and doing the same thing isn't always healthy for us, right? It's almost like the best trainer is one that changes your workout. The moment they start working with you, oh, what did you do last week? We're going to do something different today. That's what one of my favorite things to do in diet is I teach with my clients. How are you eating now? Okay, great. That might be working for you, but we're actually going to do something completely different, because it's not the diet that's the magic. It's changing the diet that's the magic.
Did you learn any of this at Life University when you were getting your doctorate in chiropractic?
Yes, Mike, I am a doctor of chiropractic. No, my father actually taught me most of what I know. He also went to Life University and got his chiropractic degree. And I followed in his footsteps. I just saw the profound knowledge that he was teaching his clients. And these people were, unexplainably sick, meaning that doctors were unable to help them at a certain point. And so that's ultimately why I went to chiropractic school, is I loved the philosophy that they were teaching, which is if we can remove and identify what the interference is that's interfering with the body's innate ability to heal, that if we can remove that stressor, ultimately the body does the rest.
So you're bringing up stress. And this is why I got really interested in having you on the podcast. I should remind the audience, this is Dr. Olivia Pompa, doctor of chiropractic.
Yes.
And we got connected through a mutual friend who's been on this podcast, Tommy Plato, who owns the Ends restaurant. He met you and he thought of me. And he said,
favorite restaurant
these two have to talk. Right. We should go get some tallow fries.
Yes.
And as you pointed out, that's all we need. We'll just eat tallow fries for dinner. Tommy connected us, and you explained to me on the phone that you were interested in talking about hormesis. And this is the relationship between stress and well-being. So you've been hitting around it a little bit, the variability, change up the workout, change up the diet.
And that reminds me of Nicholas Nassim Taleb's anti-fragile. I think of these two as slightly different concepts, the hormesis and the anti-fragility. And so I want to invite you to explain to our audience how you think about them and what you teach your clients.
Yeah. Well, I think the best thing to understand, and I think what's really hard today in the health world, is everyone is so confused by all of the knowledge that's out there. And it's like, I'll give you the perfect example, diet, right? You see the carnivore diet, you see the vegan diet, you see the vegetarian diet, you see paleo, you see, the autoimmune diet, you see ketosis. Well, why hasn't someone been able to crack the code that actually this one diet is the right diet, right? And in my mind, it's because there is no right diet. We were not designed to eat one way and one way only. Just like the seasons change, our diets should also change. But as Americans today, we're constantly around food, no matter what. If you want a donut, or if you want a bowl of strawberries, or if you want a ribeye steak, you can go drive to any grocery store and find it, right? But 700 years ago, it wasn't like that. And so our bodies are designed to adapt to change. And so when people ask me, Olivia, like, what should I be eating? Well, first and foremost, I always ask, well, what are you doing now? Is that working for you? No. Okay, let's change your diet. And what a lot of people say is, let's say, well, I started ketosis and I lost 20 pounds, right?
Sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds excellent. So keto is the right diet for me. No, it's not. You just changed your diet. Mm-hmm. You forced your body to adapt, and your body adapting to that stress, because changing your diet is, in fact, stress. It forced the body to become healthier, and you lost weight, right? So I don't believe that there's one right diet. I think a lot of the diets are right, and I think a lot of them help people. But the key is rotating and changing your diet.
This brings up two things for me. I lost probably 50 pounds after I read Taleb's Anti-Fragile. He's the one who pointed out to me that the Mediterranean diet is a myth. Nina Teichholz's book, Big Fat Surprise, is really good on this, on sort of the scientific origins of the Mediterranean diet that were all a marketing scam. There's no Mediterranean diet. Mm-hmm. But what Taleb pointed out is that it's not what they're eating, it's when they're not eating. That especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, where you have strict, for example, in Orthodox Christianity, strict prohibitions against eating certain things. So I forget the exact numbers, so don't quote me, but it's like there's 188 days of fasting in one sort of religious calendar where you're supposed to abstain from one thing or another. And so you're constantly going through one fast or another fast.
Yeah.
It's not the Mediterranean diet and the olive oil and the fish, which are all good for you.
Sure.
It's also the fasting and the abstinence from food that is part of the diet.
Exactly.
That's consistent with what you're saying.
Yeah, because fasting is a stress, just like feasting is a stress. So, our ancestors, when they would hunt, they would fast. So they would go through periods where food wasn't available, so their body was forced, their microbiome was forced to change and adapt to no food. That's keto. That's where their bodies would go into this catabolic place and eat what we now know is autophagy, autophagy literally meaning self-eating, where their body would actually self-eat itself, which sounds bad. But we were designed to go after the unhealthy cells, the zombie or the senescent cells in our body, and that is fasting. That's the power of fasting that we hear about today. But then they would catch whatever they were catching, or they would forage whatever they were foraging for, and they would feast. Right? They wouldn't sit there counting their calories, right? They would feast, which is also a different type of stressor. And the body has to adapt to both of those.
Dr. Kelsey Dexter, she's an endocrinologist in Tennessee. And I went to the Quantum Wellness Back to Nature retreat, and she taught me this metaphor. Ketosis is winter.
Yeah.
And because there are no fruits available to you, I mean, there might be sweet potatoes or things that preserve well, but even those are low glycemic index. And so the human body is built to go into ketosis during the winter. And then in the summer, back to carbohydrates, back to some of those fast-acting whole foods, but reintroducing. So the seasonality of the crops and the animals that we're eating are built into our physiology.
100%.
You pointed out that I can now get blueberries in Phoenix, Arizona in January if I want them. If I want them flown up from Chile or something like that.
But that's not natural.
That seasonality has been removed.
Right.
So how do you eat?
You said it. In the winter, I'm keto right now, which is funny because we live in Arizona. So, because there's actually research that shows your ability to adapt to higher fructose and higher carbohydrate diets it's easier and healthier on the body when you're getting a ton of sun. So it's interesting when you live in a sunny place, right, to mimic that. But I do just that. In the winter, I eat keto. Except for women, this is super important, before my period, before my cycle, I will come out of ketosis. By that, I mean just eat higher carbs. So I purposefully pull myself out of that catabolic state during ovulation and then before my period as well. So I think that diet cycling with and around your hormones is massively important when doing keto. But I do keto in the winter, and then in the summer and fall, I eat carbs.
What is so important, because you're emphasizing this, massively important for women, what is so important about that monthly cycle and then matching your carbohydrate intake to, did you say it was ovulation?
Yeah, ovulation, and then also right before your cycle. So there's certain times of your cycle where your hormones, progesterone, which is a very protective hormone, is rising, and eating carbs protects and really helps your body produce those necessary hormones that it needs during that time of hormone elevation. So you really want to eat the foods that complement that period of your cycle.
How do the carbohydrates complement the hormones that, like progesterone, that cycle every month with a woman's menstrual cycle?
Yeah, hormone production for sure. But ultimately, too, you have to think about women's cravings, right? Why do women crave carbs and chocolate and these certain foods right before their cycle? Because the body's preparing itself for blood loss.
I thought that all the sex steroids are formed from cholesterol. What's the role of carbohydrates in forming progesterone?
I think it's less of forming hormones, but more so, in general, I think it's a different type of fuel, obviously. And I do think, and I fear that when people are in a catabolic state for too long, that the body goes into starvation mode. Mm-hmm. And so, starvation mode before your period, when you're already very stressed, the body is in a stress state. I think it's super important to pull yourself out of that.
Here's something that I did. After I got a PSA test back and it was elevated, it was 7, which means I have an inflamed prostate. Mm-hmm. And when I'd read about everything that a man is supposed to do, go have a prostate exam, go get a biopsy, the sequela of like iatrogenic injury that can result from something as benign as an elevated prostate, I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
So that's when I started doing the ice bath every day. But I did cycle in and out of keto as well. I would fast on Monday. It was the easiest day for me. I'd walk to campus, and there weren't a lot of great food options on campus anyway. And that was recovering from the weekend when I'd eat all the baked goods. I'd eat all the carbs. I'd eat the bread. I mean, these were wholesome goods. Mm-hmm. I'd go to the bakery
good
and
ingredients.
Eat this, right? So then between the fasting on Monday and the ice bath, I'd be back in keto on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'd spend 3-4 days in keto, a couple of days coming out, and then another day getting back in. My PSA dropped from 7 down to 1.8. It took me 4 months. And it probably happened quicker, but I didn't have the courage to go back to the lab and have my blood drawn just in case this wasn't working. I think there's something to be said for what you just described. And the word that comes to mind is metabolic flexibility. Do you use this term?
All the time. My father taught me that. Yeah.
Keto
flexing and metabolic flexibility. Yeah. The ability to go in and out metabolically from using carbs as a fuel source and then fat as a fuel source. And a lot of people don't have the ability to metabolically flex and go from burning carbs and then burning fat. So that's why, in my opinion, staying in ketosis for too long can actually be hard on the body because we really want to go in and out and stress the body in both ways.
I don't think we were meant for a constant winter. So you have a method of tracking where you are in your cycle and knowing what you want to add in as carbs. But what do you do to add the carbs? Like, how do you change your diet when you want to take yourself out of ketosis?
Yeah, so for me, keto is low carb. For a lot of people, it can be low carb, high fat. A lot of people, it's low carb, moderate fat. I do better moderate. Too much fat, my tummy doesn't love it. But for me, I can get into ketosis eating about 30 grams of net carbs per day. Some people are lower. Some people can stay.
Most people would call that low carb.
Yeah, that's pretty low carb. But some people can be around the 50 gram mark. I'm more 30. For me, I don't measure numbers. I think measuring numbers for me gets a little too obsessive. I think for me, I just know what I can eat to stay in keto and know what I can eat to pull myself out of keto. But for me, for carbs, I mean, I love pasta, I have to admit. But recently with pulling myself out, I've been trying, instead of doing grain, I've been doing grainless options. So sticking more with like squashes, butternut squash, fruit, so apple, papaya. Been doing a lot more fruit and berries, but yeah, and rice. Rice is a good gluten-free option that I like to use when I pull myself out.
For me, when I want to come out of keto, it's typically a croissant or pumpkin pie or some kind of delicious dessert.
Ice cream.
The ice cream's wonderful, and it might not even pop you out. Like if you're
It's
doing
true.
regular ice baths, it clears a lot of glucose. Your liver releases that glycogen. So
Right.
you've depleted your glycogen stores. Your mitochondria and your brown fat are using that glucose for thermogenesis. This is a story I did a post on. Thanksgiving is coming up. And we're all
Favorite
going
holiday.
to eat this stuff, and we're going to have the sweetened cranberry sauce, and it's fine. For me, the problem is the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Because those leftovers, they're in the fridge. And I don't have like a balanced plate. I just go straight for the pumpkin pie.
That's my family.
I'd fit right in at your table.
Yep. We use it making we make ours with maple syrup. I do
Me
all the
too.
cooking, by the way.
Yep.
I'm the cook in my family.
Atta
But
way.
the maple syrup pumpkin pie, the best.
Yep. Now, there's still carbs in there. It might not be the highest glycemic index, but after I ate a half a pumpkin pie, I experienced some food regret.
Yeah.
Got straight into the ice bath, peed on a stick a couple hours later, and my ketone levels went up.
Wow.
So you might be able to handle ice cream if
That's
there aren't too many M&Ms, folded in there. You might be able to handle some of these wholesome foods and keep yourself on the edge of keto when you've built this metabolic flexibility that we're talking
100%.
about.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is when people who are metabolically flexible, they can get back into keto like that, doing a 12-hour fast, 24-hour water fast. Also for me, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll OMAD, so one meal a day, and I'll just have one meal, but I'll eat carbs, and the next morning I'm still in ketosis.
I'm not surprised.
So that's another way to still metabolically flex, but still be able to remind yourself daily that, hey, I'm not starving.
Will you explain for our audience a little bit more your understanding of hormesis?
Yes, literally my favorite topic. I remember the first time my dad taught it to myself and his doctor group, and I just like a light bulb went off in my brain. I was like, oh, that's how it works. Hormesis, for me, how I always like to explain it, is if we can change an environment for the human body then has to adapt or change or adapt to that environment. And the stress can either be healthy or unhealthy, depending on, number one, the ability for the body to adapt to that stress or not adapt. If the body doesn't adapt, it's not healthy. If the body can adapt, it's good for the body.
A living body adapts.
Yeah.
A machine is incapable of adapting because
Right.
it's not alive. And so machines are good at doing the same thing over and over and over again until they wear out. We sometimes think of aging as wearing out, but it's not an apt metaphor. We are not machines. We are complex systems. And so when we get a certain amount of stress, we're capable of adapting and coming out the other side stronger.
Yeah.
What kind of stresses are we talking about?
So many. Well, in my world, I run the fulfillment side, so coaching of my father's coaching program, and we help a lot of really sick people, autoimmune, chronic illness, with detox, so cellular detox, diet variation principles, what we were just talking about. Fasting is another part of that. Source removal, so people that have had root canals, dental history that has just gone completely wrong, mold history, you name it. Heavy metals is one of our big ones. And part of the cellular detox process is we do use herbal formulas, right? But herbs are, it's exactly what Hormesis is. Herbs are applying the principle of Hormesis in that a lot of sick people, they start taking certain herbs and they don't feel well because the body isn't adapting, right? And so what we do is I teach my coaches, well, okay, they're not feeling well, let's cut the dose, right? Cut the dose, allow them to adapt to that smaller dose, and then we can increase over time.
Well, hang on a second. What about Paul Saladino's thesis? The stems and the seeds and the leaves of the plants, they don't want to be eaten. They're poisonous.
My question would be, sure, maybe, but I do believe that, sadly, in America today and in the world today, I think our guts are just so compromised that our guts are unable to adapt to the stressors of plant toxins. I do believe in some levels that those plant toxins are actually healthy for you.
They're medicine.
Isn't that crazy?
When you think of plants, and sure, they have toxicity.
In too much amounts,
Yeah.
sure.
But when you say herbs, now of course herbs are plants, we're talking about, well, flavorings, but we're talking about small doses of plants. We're not talking about eating the whole dang spinach and kale salad and filling yourself up with oxalates.
Right.
I think Saladino has a really good point.
Yeah,
and
he
yet,
does.
when we think of plants as medicine, we can use them to treat states of disease. That doesn't mean that we're supposed to be on them all the time.
Exactly, rotation.
I think the pharmaceutical industry has taught us that you have a condition for which you take one pill that targets one symptom at one time, and then of course they want us to be on it for the rest of our lives.
Right.
It's garbage. There's no such thing as a side effect. There are only effects.
Yeah.
And so the pill or the plant or whatever it is has effects because our body are complex systems. And to minimize some of those effects by calling them side effects or something, as if you're blaming the patient for experiencing them, is garbage. And yet we're susceptible to the lies of the pharmaceuticals because intuitively we know that things we eat can either heal our body, that our bodies will respond to the things that we eat. And so we say, here, take a pill. Some part of our innate biology responds to that the same way that a chimpanzee with a parasite infection might go into the woods and know exactly which leaves to chew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
You've mentioned your father a few times. You should probably explain to our audience who you're talking about.
Yes, my father's Dr. Daniel Pompa. My father, my mentor, my second father actually, which is super cool. And he's literally taught me everything I know. I have to give him all of the credit. And I remember after he adopted me when I was 7, 5-6 years later, I was watching him, I don't like to say heal, but helping the body heal, right? Teaching these clients what they needed to know in order to get well. Just amazing knowledge, right? And ultimately, my father, he was teaching what he knew to be true because he went through it himself, right? And my father, about 25 years ago now, got very sick, very, very sick. He had what we call a perfect storm. So amalgam fillings he had taken out or drilled out improperly, which very quickly is an exposure to mercury, inorganic mercury, right? Goes right to the brain, and mercury is a known neurotoxin, and it drives a lot of neurotoxic illnesses today. So around the time that he had these fillings drilled out, he also had some physical bike racing that he was training for, so he was overtraining for bike races, so there was a physical component, a chemical component from the mercury, and then he was also living in a moldy home, so there was a mycotoxin exposure, and his bucket overfilled, overflowed, right, as we like to say, and he became very sick, almost to the point of suicide. I mean, he talks about it all the time. He would have rather have died than been that sick for the rest of his life. And so knowing what my father knew about the body and the philosophy of chiropractic, he dug and started detoxing himself and learning the process of other people, kind of putting all of the missing links together. And when he started to kind of gain his health back, he, honestly, by God, I believe he was led in a different direction away from the brick and mortar chiropractic. I love chiropractic, but he realized through helping other people that, okay, I have my story that I need to share, and I need to really truly show people how to get their lives back. And it all starts with finding the root cause of why people are sick, and not always, covering up the symptom with even kind of an herbal supplement, or even just, the healthy swap for a headache, right? But why are you getting a headache? And so he went on that mission of really coaching one-on-one people that were very, very sick on their deathbed, really. And so now I coach other health coaches, and we have a coaching program. So, but my father's incredible, amazing.
I think the idea of detox, it's very attractive.
Yeah.
I'm going to purge myself of these poisons that are making me sick.
Yeah.
Now, the poisons are a stressor, but we know the classic hormetic curve is an upside down U. Not enough stress, and your health suffers.
Yeah.
Just the right amount of stress or positive stress, and your health benefits, but then too much, and of course, you suffer again.
Mm-hmm.
But you're in a different situation. You mentioned that Dr. Daniel Pompa is your second father,
mm-hmm.
and that you were adopted when you were 7. Not all stresses come in the form of a chemical.
So true.
Are you familiar with the Adverse Childhood Experiences, the ACEs score?
Yes, but I'm not super well versed in it, but I've heard of it.
There was a woman, and I wish I could remember her name, who invented the acronym ACEs. Mm-hmm. She wanted to study whether what she called adverse child events correlated or were associated with success or failure later in life. Mm-hmm. And she found, maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but I think she was when she presented the data, the upside down hormetic stress curve. Mm-hmm. You might think that a blissful childhood free of adverse events would be the ideal. Certainly, parents want to provide that for their kid, right? But that wasn't it.
Yeah.
There were some outliers, children who had extremely high ACE scores, lots of adverse events, and they did great. There were some children who didn't do great when they had so many ACE scores. But what she found, the children who did the best had a modest score. That is, some optimal level of stress and overcoming and adaptation. You've posted about this, and so I don't feel embarrassed to ask you about what happened when you were 7 and why you were adopted. Will you let us know?
Yeah, I'd love to share it. And I love where you're going with this, because I have had a lot of trauma in my childhood, and honestly throughout my whole life, because I really do believe childhood trauma plays a bigger impact than even trauma later in life, because it's who you become. That trauma influences who you are and how you think of yourself as you get older, right? And so I think childhood trauma exceptionally changes the direction of your life. And it literally exactly what you just said. But when I was 7 years old, my father murdered my mother. And my twin brother and I, we were in the home, actually just in the next room over. And after it had happened, we both... It's crazy because I knew what had happened. My parents at the time were fighting a lot, and I knew my father had guns in the home as well. And so I was aware, quickly I knew, Dad just shot Mom, And very quickly I said to my brother, we should go out there. And so we did. And, it was pretty gory. Saw, my mother on the floor in the kitchen, and my father, I was scared of my father. I saw the gun in his hand. He was laying on the floor. And so I didn't approach him, but my twin did and saw more than what I needed to see. So I'm really grateful that I did not see what he had seen. But yeah, lost my parents at 7 years old in a tragic murder-suicide. And not only did I lose them, but I saw that, which I still see those pictures in my head today. But honestly, the hardest part wasn't just losing my parents. It was what came after. It was having to adapt to a new household. See, I'm trembling. I do this thing where I tremble when I talk about things that are very hard. But yeah, entering the new home, which was a completely different dynamic. My parents were like health freaks, right? The Pompas,
How did you find a new home?
They were willed to take us in.
Willed to take?
Willed, yeah.
Gotcha.
So godparents, essentially, people would think of it like that. So
they knew your parents and you ahead of time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so to this day I call them Marilee and Danny, because I knew them before My parents passed away, so when I entered their home, it was like Marilee and Danny. Like I already knew them, you know. But they're more my
and
parents
they had kids
than
of their own.
And they had 3 boys of their own. Yeah, so it was a very difficult dynamic. Like not only did we mess up the birth order of all the kids, right? It was like we were, you know, used to eating bad food and, you know, not caring about our health. And, you know, my family doesn't believe in teaching their kids about Santa Claus, and my old parents did. And so it was all this, a whole dynamic just flipped over for us, right?
Yeah.
And my twin brother, too, to make matters worse, he was on the autistic spectrum, severely vaccine damaged when he was 6 years old, which I remember that whole story as well. And so not only did they take in 2 kids that had just lost their parents, but, you know, my brother was on the spectrum. So he was struggling in school. And so it was very hard. It was a very hard childhood for sure.
And now you're 7, you're 8, you're 9. What was that like?
Scary, sad.
Were there services, social services, therapy services? Was there a recovery plan for you and your brother?
Yeah, my parents right away put us in like really good counseling. And I remember being like super grateful for that, just because the support was always there. For me, I'm a Christian. For me, my parents teaching me at a very young age, because my parents are also Christians, Romans 8:28, that God does everything, you know, any bad thing is really good, right? And that God does all things for a reason. And that just always really stuck to me. And I was always reminding myself of that. And so I always knew that even though I had lost my parents, that it would be good in the future, right? And so I clung to that, really. And so even though it was very difficult adapting to a new home, having new parents, honestly, what the hardest part was that love. Like you look for love as a child, but my parents weren't my real parents. And so I didn't feel like I was deserving of love because they weren't my parents. And so that was the hardest part for me.
When I read Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, Jobs was adopted. And I guess one of the things that adoption agencies or adoptive parents would tell the children is that they were chosen. Every biological parent just gets whatever kid comes out, you know.
Right.
But of all the hundreds of children that could have been chosen, you were chosen. Were you told that?
I wasn't chosen. It just happened. It just happened. They didn't think it would ever happen, you know?
No, nobody did. Nobody was planning it. Nobody prepared
so
for that.
I think that was hard, right? Is I didn't feel like I was chosen. It just had to happen.
You've also written that God never wastes pain. Will you tell me what that means?
Well, I believe God allows us to go through difficult things in our life. I don't believe anything bad is from God. I think only good is from Him. But I do believe that evil is where bad comes from. The enemy produces evil. And I do believe that He allows us to go through difficult things to prime us, to get us ready for what He needs us to ultimately do, to ultimately be His servant. And I feel called to be on this mission and in this mission of helping His people ultimately get their life back and bring people even that aren't His people yet to the table, right? And I believe that sometimes that's through a healing journey that they find Him in that, because I really do believe that God doesn't waste pain, that it is a journey and there is a destination. What my family, we like to say is from pain to purpose to promise. That's our family motto, from pain to purpose to promise.
What's the purpose to promise part?
Well, exactly what we said it. God doesn't waste pain, and I believe that that's a promise that He gives us, is that anything difficult that He allows us to go through, that He will be there with us, and that there's good that will come from it. And that's His promise to us.
I'm thinking about trauma, the ACEs, and what I've read about PTSD. This comes from Peter Levine. Peter Levine is a psychologist who believes that stress, when it's held, when it's trapped inside the body, is trauma, and that it must be released from the nervous system. There are two characteristics that are associated with that stress trapping. Immobilization is one of the first ones. And these are from clinical trials where people are under stress. It might be a child undergoing surgery, could be dentist chair, it could be a broken bone, something like that. And of course the child is immobilized for the convenience of the surgeon. Coming out of surgery, the child typically trembles. Levine will take that. The second one I think is helplessness, but helplessness and immobilization together. And so certainly a child undergoing surgery or somebody undergoing brain surgery, something like this, combines both of those. Levine writes about how he's taken his patients through a somatic healing journey by stimulating or inducing this trembling response that you just mentioned you were talking about as you recalled your own trauma. He says that that movement, that trembling, which I think is indistinguishable from shivering, is the release of the stress and the trauma.
Yeah, when I find myself when I'm in, like when you and I spoke on the phone, like I can talk about it and I don't have a hard time talking about what I went through. But then the moment I'm in a situation where it feels more like, okay, I want to get deep and really like talk about this, then I tremble. Like I just can't, I tremble. I don't know how to explain it. Like, and it doesn't just happen when I talk about what happened when I was a child. Like it'll happen in, you know, certain situations where I'm triggered because of losing my parents or that emotion, like that stored up stress, like you're bringing up. I mean, and it's such a indescribable feeling, like this tremble feeling. Yeah.
There's a book, I can't remember the title, Bad Therapy maybe, but it's on the iatrogenic injury that can be caused by therapy. And the author appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I check in with Joe Rogan. He's a customer, and he's got a curiosity about health and wellness, which has been very beneficial for his audience. One of the risks of talk therapy, so this traditional talk therapy, is that the patient, the client, the subject will relive the trauma in their imagination without resolving it.
Yeah.
Levine's approach is different. The release of the trauma is somatic, that is, it's being trapped, or this is withheld stress, and that the trembling resets the nervous system. That you don't necessarily have to relive in your imagination the traumatic experience, that your body can release the trauma through this trembling. I can't imagine what your counseling was like when you were a little girl, if you relate to any of these characterizations. And I want to pause there and give you a chance to react. You probably see where I'm going with this because I'm going to bring it to the ice bath.
I mean, I have to say, I was such a joyful little girl. Like, I would get the Joy Award in school all the time, maybe because they just, like, felt bad for me and they couldn't believe that I was, like, a happy girl, even though I had gone through some tragedy. But seriously, my parents were a big part of that. Like, my parents just were constantly reminding me that there was a reason why it had happened and that God was good. And I give them a lot of credit. Honestly, like, I went through a lot of counseling, but it was not the counselors. It was my parents.
Yeah.
Like, talk about nature versus nurture. Yeah. I mean, my parents are incredible people, and just their faith. And I mean, they've gone through hard things too. And I always have to recognize, taking in 2 kids, that quite honestly, they probably didn't want my brother and I, and they still did it because they knew that it was the right thing to do. And
which they wanted to do.
Yeah, of course they did. Yeah. But I think, you know, if I had been in their shoes, it would have been hard. Very, very hard.
Well, we read a lot about people who protest the ice bath. They say, oh, I'm under too much stress. I can't handle any more stress. Or if I do too many ice baths, I'll burn out my adrenals, or whatever it is. You went through a period in your life where you, if I'm understanding it correctly, you pushed that hormetic stress curve too
I did.
far.
But it wasn't ice bath. It was everything else, right?
Tell me about that. Because you weren't a little girl anymore at this point.
No, but definitely the emotional side was playing into it. 3 years ago, I went through a period of my life where just major change, right? I had graduated chiropractic school, moved to Puerto Rico, fell in love with Puerto Rico. Like, my whole heart was there. And I had a little bit of a relationship change in my life, and so I had decided to leave Puerto Rico.
Hang on a second. A little bit of a relationship change
I
in
know.
your life.
I'm in a relationship now, so I almost
pass on the podcast. It was just a little bit. It was just a tweak.
I had a pretty big breakup in my life. Yeah, and it was very hard for me because, you think that, you have it all figured out, but then I just knew God was telling me this isn't the right person for me. And, but it was my life. It was this person was my life. This place had become my life. And, so I had decided to leave, which ultimately was for the best. But, I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, and definitely made some pretty not so great friends. And so I was in an environment that, let's just say it what it is. I was drinking alcohol a lot. And I wasn't proud of that. And I'm just being super vulnerable right now. I'm not proud of that period of my life that when I moved here, there's a pretty big drinking culture here in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And from some of the trauma of my breakup, I had quickly moved here wanting to just make new friends and kind of start over because I didn't have any friends from outside of Puerto Rico. And my friends, I went to Florida State. So my friends were all over the country and nowhere, not Arizona. And so it was very hard for me. And so I kind of, through putting myself around the wrong friends, got into drinking too much, thankfully nothing else. But, and of course you make excuses for why you're doing it. Oh, it's just social, whatever. But I'm a doctor. I teach about health. Why am I drinking alcohol? And so there was just a disconnect for me.
To anesthetize, to numb.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
There's a reason.
There was a numbing for me. And I realized later it wasn't for social. It wasn't because I'm type A and I love being social. It's because Olivia has pain in her past that I was not dealing with. And a lot of it was abandonment from my childhood and losing my parents. And so, and interestingly enough, I'm a strong believer in generational sin, and my father was an alcoholic. That's why my mother left him, was because he was an alcoholic. And so even though I was aware of these things, I still was getting caught up in drinking all of the time. And so that on top of, you also have not taking care of my body, I started gaining weight. And so I started working out way too much. And my bucket tipped, just completely tipped. And around this time, I'm trying to cold plunge, thinking that it's only going to help me, which I'm sure at some levels it did. But I think I was just doing way too much at once on top of drinking. And my diet wasn't good. And
it sounds like you changed a lot of things. But there must have been a moment at which you said, this isn't working for me. I'm going to start making changes. What did you start changing?
Yeah. So number one, I don't drink. Maybe I haven't drank in a long time, but I feel like I would on Thanksgiving have a glass of wine or something like that. But because it wasn't in any way that
did you
kind of.
Quit cold turkey, or did you go through the 12 steps? What worked for you?
No, I just quit.
Okay.
I went to Europe all summer and I was drinking over there, and then came back and was like, you know what? I just want to not drink for a while and see how I feel, kind of experiment. And I just have never felt better. Have never felt better not drinking. And then there's also the spiritual side of it where, in the Bible, it talks about being spiritually sober and how you can become closer to God in that. And I noticed that right away was my willingness and readiness to dive into scripture the next morning, because mornings are hard for me. I always don't feel super great mornings, but a lot of it is because I was drinking the night before, right? And so I wake up now just so excited to dive into scripture. And so that has definitely changed a lot.
What else changed? You changed your exercise routine?
Actually, yes. So back then I was very much so, going into Hormesis conversation, pushing, but I wasn't adapting. So, it would take me 3-4 days to recover from a workout because I had pushed myself too hard. Right. And so now I'm more proactive in doing what I feel is best for me that day. Even if it's just a hike, even if it's just a light workout, when I start to feel like I'm fatigued and, okay, this is enough for me. Otherwise, it's going to kind of set me over the edge and I'm not going to feel well for the rest of the day. I know that now, and I don't punish myself for saying, you know what, this is enough for me today.
We have maybe it's a cultural fallacy, but I remember when MTV, back when they showed, videos, and Billy Idol was like, too much is never enough. We have somehow baked in that if a little bit is good, more must be better.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all.
No.
When I started going into the testosterone research, I realized that this fallacy existed even in clinical science. They'd give, I don't know, some football team like some ashwagandha, and they'd say, oh, look, we got a 15% boost in total testosterone. And then some other guy would say, well, I'm going to give them 3 times as much ashwagandha. I'll get a bigger boost. And then, of course, their total testosterone would tank because most of this, even clinical research, fails to understand that there is a dose-response relationship that is a hormetic stress curve. And it's not just testosterone. It is exercise as well. It is everything. Dr. Kirk Parsley tells me how important sleep is. Testosterone is made in your sleep, right? But if you sleep 20 hours a day, you think that's good for you? No. The point is, you need feast, you need fasting, you need light, you need dark, you need exercise, you need recovery. You can even go without water to create a hormetic stress in your body.
Dry fasting.
A little bit of water is good. Too much water, it'll kill you. It's probably what killed Bruce Lee. And so we're coming back to this idea of the hormetic stress curve. People need stress in their life, and they don't need too much.
Right.
So how do you stay in touch with the amount that's right for you? How do you know?
Oh, that's so funny. In my family, we make a joke because we talk about how someone responds to our detox. We either call them a chicken, a turkey, or an albatross. An albatross, I think, is the bird.
Albatross?
Albatross, yeah, thank you. Albatross. So it's funny because I call my dogs turkey and chicken because I have a little dog and a big dog, so I call it chicken, turkey. Anyway, the joke is I'm a chicken. So chickens, they're so febrile and they respond like to everything, like one little thing and they're like, "Paka!" You know what I mean? Like, this is a joke, but this is the best way I can explain it. I'm a chicken. So one thing changes for me and I immediately feel it. I notice it. I'm super body sensitive and I can hear my body when something happens or changes. Men, y'all are albatrosses. You have a stressor happen and you're like, nope, felt nothing. So that's the best way I can explain it. For me is I'm a chicken and I feel like if I push myself too much in the gym, I just don't feel well. Same with diet. If I change my diet or eat something unhealthy, I just do not feel well the next day. I'm not your average American that can go and eat fast food and feel fine the next day. Quite the opposite.
I'm going to object to this characterization of men, of course, as feeling nothing, because that's not true. From your perspective, I can understand why you would say that. Men are a lot less likely to talk about their feelings, and there's a lot of disincentives for doing it. Putting the stake in the ground, it's not that men feel nothing, but we do feel different, and we do react different than women do, and that's part of the beauty of like human biology is that men and women are different, and they should be.
Absolutely.
Where we get crossed up is in expecting or judging someone for being who they are. Like, be your chicken. It's not my job to tell you to be any different. But you didn't describe what a turkey was?
Turkey's just in between.
Oh, all right.
Just totally in between. Like, that's so where this has come from as well as detox. Like when we teach cellular detox and we're having our clients dose chelators, men, this is a thing that we see in our program. Men just do not have symptoms. Like they'll start taking the chelator and they're like, I feel nothing. Chickens, you give them one drop and they're like, my whole world has changed. So
some people will respond differently because they're either more sensitive or they're more expressive.
Yeah, it's the sensitivity thing. Yeah.
We should explain chelation. Chelation is the process of attaching a metal ion to something else that keeps it soluble and allows your body to remove it.
Transport it,
pee it out, as an example. So what are some of the chelating agents that you'll use?
Yeah, so my father actually, we use one that is a liposomal zeolite, so we love that one. And then we also use EDTA, DMSA. DMSA is one of my favorites, which is a water-soluble chelator, so people that don't feel as well using fat-soluble chelators, water-soluble can be really exceptional. And DMSA has a really high affinity for mercury. So I have
DSMA must be
DMSA.
different than DMSO, which we're hearing a lot about. And I don't want to confuse the two. Is the DMS the same, and we're only talking about the last?
Yeah, DMSA is a chelator. DMSO, I don't know.
I don't know.
I've
never
heard of
used
what you're
it.
talking about,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I can't break down what it is at this moment.
It sounds like when you're working with your clients, you have to make adjustments along the way to see what's working for them.
Totally.
How do you know? What do they report to you? Or what do you
Symptoms.
track? So you're working on the symptoms.
But every symptom's different, to your point. You can't, a lot of my clients will ask me when I start detox, what am I going to feel? I always kind of giggle because I'm like, well, whatever your body is wanting you to feel, because it's so different for everyone. Detox symptoms. And I do almost hate using that word because detox can mean so many things.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about our detox process of using chelators and binders and upregulating cell function on purpose to drive cellular detox and get these toxins out of the body. That's what I'm referring to when I say detox. But when people start our process, they can either feel icky or they can feel actually really good. Some people, their symptoms are, I have less brain fog. Wow, I have energy. Wow, this is the best I felt in a long time. I remember the first time I took DMSA myself, and I told you I don't feel well in the mornings. That's like my hot, not feeling the best, like don't talk to Olivia type of moment is in the mornings. And I remember that day I made my bed for the first time, because I felt so good, right? Some people's detox symptoms are actually really good, and then you have the albatrosses that feel absolutely nothing.
And what keeps them motivated to stay with the program?
People that feel nothing?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I actually love that question. So apart from just detox, how I like to explain it is removing the source of toxins from your body, right? But we also do other things in our program. We teach source removal, whether or not that's getting people out of moldy homes. Maybe it's dental work that they need done, amalgam fillings, root canals, wisdom teeth that have gone wrong and turned to a cavitation later on. So ultimately, we're going after other upstream stressors that they're being exposed to that's continuously dumping toxins into their body. And typically with some of our people that feel nothing in detox, number one, we keep them detoxing long enough that eventually when the body starts to really uproot some of these deep-rooted toxins, like in the pituitary gland, then they start seeing symptoms. But I really do think that going after some of these big stressors, like getting people out of moldy homes, getting these massive cavitations, these hidden infections out of their mouth, I think it unleashes such a burden on the body that when you actually start detoxing them even more, those pathways are more open because they're less inflamed, that they go, oh, something's happening. Yeah, you're actually detoxing now because there's less inflammation than there was when we first started.
What do you do for someone who's carrying trauma rather than chemicals?
Oh, that's so hard. But I love that question. You know, I would say that our coaches are incredible, and they know when there's trauma that's really kind of a block, because you said it, right? I think a root canal can be a physical block, right, for detox pathways. I think people in a moldy home are never going to get truly well, no matter how much they change their diet, no matter how much they detox. Why? Because they might be getting toxins out of their body, but they're still allowing more into their body. So that's what we call going after the source of what's keeping you sick, right? But if it's a emotional trauma that's blocking you,
Correct.
I mean, yeah. I mean, number one, we expose that first and foremost, and typically they know it. A lot of times emotional, it's when they start to feel better through detox, through our process, that they start to wake up that, okay, I'm ready for more. They're like, they become addicted to the process of healing because they're like, wow, that worked. What's next, right? I went through that. I was the perfect guinea pig in my father's house because I was willing to do it all. I was willing to do the detox. I was willing to do the dental work. I was willing to change my diet and do keto and do the fasting. He would have called me the most loyal to the process, truly. But when I got to a point where I was plateauing, it was the emotional side for me that was keeping me from quitting alcohol, quitting me from doing things that I knew I shouldn't have been doing that was only making my health worse, right? It was a block for me for my ultimate healing. And so, you know, I do think, to be honest, I think the emotional is more important than the physical. right? Our thoughts become our reality. I believe in what Bruce Lipton wrote.
Biology of belief.
Yeah,
The
great
cells
book.
in your body have no clue whether this is reality or just coming from your brain. They don't have a choice.
Yeah.
They respond to the signals because they have to.
I think the emotional side is bigger than we know.
So I agree. You said that you believed in generational sin. And I'm going to step back from the moral aspect of that because sin is a morally
It carries
laden
a,
term.
yeah, sure.
Instead, I'm going to talk about epigenetics.
Okay.
We know that the experiences that your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents had that modified their epigenome. So this is a coding of your DNA that will turn on or off the expression of your genes. And when the human being has this environmental stressful experience that modifies their epigenome, that is so their DNA becomes programmed to respond to that environmental stress, whatever it is. It could be famine, it could be war, it could be any number of things. That epigenome is inheritable. So it is passed down to subsequent generations. That means the offspring are now coded to respond in the same way as the parents did due to the environment. So I can say, what do you do with the, when it's not chemical, it's emotional? What do you do when someone is carrying the epigenome of trauma that goes several generations back? And here's the hypothesis. That epigenome was created by experience, and it can be rewritten by experience. So what are the new experiences? Those new experiences can exist in reality, or they can exist in your imagination, the way Lipton suggests is the biology of belief. And the cells in your body, your epigenome, doesn't know the difference. So one example that I had to read about in the library was ayahuasca. People say, I'm transformed, I feel so much different. I never understood what the hell they were talking about. I tried ayahuasca. It was too much vomiting for me, but I gave it a go. I didn't feel that transformation, but I went to the library, and it turns out that as little as one experience with ayahuasca can rewrite your epigenome. And if that's what happened for these people, would they report that they feel transformed, that they feel different? Sure. But then if they put themselves back in the exact same environment and have similar experiences, their epigenome can be rewritten again. Another way to do it is, and this is coming from a book called It Didn't Start With You. Mark Willon or Mark Wijan, I don't remember, but through storytelling. So this is narrative. This could be improvisational theater. This could be Bruce Lipton's, living in your imagination. Your thoughts govern your physiological reality by rewriting your epigenome. Now, I'm going to pause there on that rant. I'm a college professor, so sometimes I lecture.
No,
right?
I love it. I love listening to you because you're so brilliant, but also you explain things in a way that's easy to understand.
Well, it's a good time for me to allow you to react to that, and then I'm going to connect it to the last topic if I do it right. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is I just keep thinking as you're speaking how important the emotional side is, truly, and that, I don't have any experience with ayahuasca or any of those things, but I think there is a code to crack with, if it is an ayahuasca, what is it that can help people have these experiences that you're talking about that I believe can help rewrite, because I believe in the ability to turn on and off these genes that ultimately influence how we react to stress, right? But what is it? Like, how can we crack that code? Because I don't have the answer. I wish I would know, or I'd be doing it, And I do think that that's where I have plateaued in my own healing journey. If I'm being vulnerable and honest, is the emotional side. I'm still triggered all the time emotionally with my past, and it could be daily. Even if you don't think about it or you're not conscious of, oh, wow, that was a trigger for me. It still happens all the time. And I know it's affecting me physiologically,
From what I've read, when the trauma is released, you still have the memory, but it's no longer attached to the emotion. So you don't have the emotional flashback. Cognitively, your brain is able to recall all of it, but it's not associated with the same affective response. So the theory here is that when you get into the ice bath and you have that sympathetic activation, and you learn how to breathe. You learn how to bring your parasympathetic to the dominant state. You're no longer catastrophizing in your mind. That you're training your nervous system and your brain. And this is just a hypothesis, but you're training your nervous system to respond to stress that could be outside the ice bath, to respond to the flashback, or to respond to the event that might be triggering, and say, wait a second, I know how to do this. I got this. I know how to breathe. I know how to bring my heart rate down. I know how to become aware of what's happening in my body and handle this thing that's happening to me. The shivering that happens in the ice bath might be part of that same somatic release that Levine calls trembling. There are some days I get into the ice bath, I start shivering. It's like 15 seconds. And that's not because I lack brown fat or I lack, thermogenic adaptation or something. It's because I'm having a hard day. And when that happens, I say, bring it, bring the shivering. Just like I'm going to shiver all that stress out into the water.
Yeah.
It works. I get out and I feel like there's nothing I can't take on. There's nothing I can't handle. It pains me when people are posting that they can't ice bath because they already have too much stress in their life or whatever. And it pains me because I want them to be able to deal with that stress.
Yeah.
And they lack a willingness, or maybe it's a courage, to use stress to inoculate themselves against other stressors.
Some people are happy in their misery, weirdly.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is something that Anna Lemke writes about in Dopamine Nation. There's a whole chapter on, because she does addiction recovery counseling, on a patient that she had, which used the ice bath to overcome whatever he thought his compulsive behaviors were. She says the attachment of pain and pleasure is like inviolable. They cannot be severed from one another. And I'm not sure that I really buy into what she's talking about. I'm not sure she's ever been into an ice bath, but she describes this hormetic process of using smaller stressors to inure yourself against the larger ones. What was it like for you? You spent
the
3
cold
minutes.
plunge. Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on. Was I feel what you're touching on with the stress and feeling better after cold plunging. I mean, I was that person that I would make an excuse that, oh, well, I have a little bit of a low thyroid, so I don't want to touch cold plunge, right? Like, I was totally that person. But no matter what, even though I knew that every time I did the cold plunge, I always felt better after. Every time. Like, there was never a time that I was like, wow, I feel like so, you know what? Even after sauna sometimes, you're like, oh, I have a headache and I feel like I just don't feel well. Never after a cold plunge have I ever felt that way. So how could it be bad for you?
That's a great question. I've never regretted an ice bath.
You know?
I don't know people who have regretted an ice bath, but sometimes they post online. I just don't know who these people are. So I'm not saying it could never happen. For me, it's never happened. And so you're saying if you feel great afterwards, how could it be bad for you? That might not be the most reliable marker.
Yeah, that's horrible.
But it's working for me. And so I'm not going to give it up just because somebody said it was a bad idea.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I felt great after, and I've had a long day. So I have to admit, I'm excited and looking forward to getting one myself.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. You can always come to our studio. We're in Phoenix. You can use it anytime you like.
It's cold.
And we have a medical affiliate program as well that we can take advantage of in your case.
I would love that, yeah. How
do people learn more from you? How do they keep track of what you're working on?
Well, it's funny. I feel like I've been called this. I've been feeling like sharing my story has been on my heart more. I feel like when I post content, it's more health content. You're
talking about the plastics that are found in packaging and how to decode where the hidden seed oils are and things like that. I've been on your Instagram.
Even that, yes. But I feel like, and yet the makeup, right? Like what better makeup, right? But I do want to, I think what I'm missing is the emotional side. Like I really want to help women and men that have gone through trauma and help break through that. And I don't have all the answers. I don't. And I'll be honest and say it. I don't have a perfect program for you. I don't have A plus B equals C formula for these people. I don't. But I think I'm going through it, and I've been through it. I haven't, I wouldn't call myself fully healed in the emotional side whatsoever, but I would say if someone has been through trauma and they feel like it's affecting themselves physiologically, to reach out. Instagram for sure is where I really want to start being a little bit louder about my story, but YouTube very soon. So yeah.
So your Instagram handle, remind us.
Dr. Olivia Pompa.
Pompa.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Dr. Olivia Pompa.
So we can.
And that's the same with YouTube.
And you have a channel on YouTube. Same
Dr.
thing,
Olivia
Dr.
Pompa.
Olivia Pompa. So as things occur to you, we could learn about them there. It's very difficult in social media to project anything other than absolute confidence. It's very difficult to figure things out loud. People will come after you. It's very difficult to communicate anything but oversimplification and exaggeration on social media because you're not going to get the clicks. On the other hand, it's very brave to be willing to change your mind or to ask questions out loud. And I'm not about living my life as a coward or in fear any longer. One of our taglines for Morosco is that Morosco's for the courageous.
I love that.
Easier ice baths. There are easier cold plunges. There are easier things that you can do with your life. It takes courage to do what you did. Get into that.
I was nervous before.
You're supposed to be.
It's the 15 seconds before. It's the anticipation.
Yep,
that was the worst part.
Well, thanks for coming down and doing it with us.
Thank you for having me.
Us.
Yeah, this was a pleasure.
I'm glad. I'm ready for tallow fries.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.